Welcome to Case Chronicles by Case Radar, a podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of court cases and judgments. I'm David Dio, your host, and together we'll explore the stories behind some of the most significant legal discussions, unraveling the complexities of the law one case at a time. Whether you're a legal professional, a law student, or just someone with a keen interest in justice, Case Chronicles by Case Radar is here to provide you with insightful analysis and compelling narratives straight from the courtroom. So, sit back, relax, and join us as we journey through the intricacies of the legal system, shedding light on the rulings that shape our society. Let's get started.
Welcome back, guys. So, to get into it, our case today is Aniefiok Akpan Udoh versus Alibert Products Nigeria Ltd. This lawsuit was heard in the National Industrial Court of Nigeria, Abuja Judicial Division. The case number was NICN/ABJ/08/2023, and it all came down to the decision of Honorable Justice Oyeju O. Oyewumi, who delivered the final judgment on the 29th of February 2024. Here's a quick rundown of the players in today's story. Representing the claimant, Mr. Aniefiok Akpan Udoh, was legal counsel Albert Uko, joined by Charles Donglong and Aminu Jimo. The defendant, Alibert Products Nigeria Ltd, came to court represented by Mr. Agbara alongside IG Udoko. Now let's dig into the facts of the case. Picture this. It's early January 2020, and Mr. Udoh is on the factory floor of Alibert Products Nigeria Ltd, working diligently on the foaming department. His role? Operating a foaming machine that was critical to the company's production process. But there's a problem, a serious one. The machine he's working on is faulty. Mr. Udoh had raised concerns about the malfunctioning machine multiple times. He also requested proper safety gear, industrial gloves, protective goggles, you name it. But these requests fell on deaf ears, and instead his supervisors gave him an ultimatum: meet your production targets or face the consequences. On the 9th of January 2020, tragedy struck. While operating the faulty machine, a malfunction caused serious injury to Mr. Udoh's hand, and the outcome was that his right index finger had to be amputated. This is devastating, and this injury did not just take away a part of Mr. Udoh's hand, it affected his entire life. Unable to secure another job due to his disability, he decided enough was enough, and on the 19th of January 2023, he filed a lawsuit against his former employer, seeking justice for the injury he suffered, and he demanded the following. 1. 5 million naira as compensation for the permanent injuries and disabilities. 2. 3 million for the trauma and inconvenience suffered during his hospitalization. 3. 2 million in punitive and exemplary damages. And 4. 2 million for the cost of litigation. The courtroom showdown kicked off with the claimant's arguments. Mr. Udoh's legal team argued that the injury was directly caused by the defendant's negligence, and they pointed to the company's failure to repair the faulty machine and its refusal to provide safety equipment despite repeated requests. Essentially, they said this was preventable, and Alibert Production failed its duty of care. The case law cited in support was from the Supreme Court decision in MNL versus Umwachukwu 2004. Where the court reinforced the principle that a breach of contractual duty of care could give rise to claims in negligence. They argued that negligence occurs where a party fails to exercise the level of care that a reasonable person would in similar circumstances. And in this case, Mr. Udoh was exposed to an unnecessary and avoidable risk, a classic negligence scenario. But Alibert Production wasn't backing down easily. Their defense team made some super strong arguments. They did not deny the injury, and in fact, they admitted that Mr. Udoh lost his finger in their factory. However, they painted a different picture. They claimed that Mr. Udoh was fully trained to operate the machine safely, and they insisted that he had been provided with protective gear, including gloves and goggles, and that on the day of the incident, the machine was actually working fine until it suddenly malfunctioned. And according to them, it was Mr. Udoh's decision to stick his hand into the machine against safety instructions, which then led to the injury. That's a massive twist, right? To back up their claims, the defense cited Seismograph Service versus Mark, where the court held that negligence must be proven with specific evidence and that the burden of proof lies with the claimant. They argued that Mr. Udoh failed to establish a direct causal link between the defendant's alleged negligence and the injury. Furthermore, they provided documentation showing that they had footed his medical bills and continued paying his salary when he was hospitalized. And now, here's where it gets interesting. Justice Oyewumi had the unenviable task of sorting through these competing narratives, and the judge distilled the case down to one core question. Had the claimant proven his claims on the balance of probabilities to be entitled to the relief sought? First off, the court addressed the big elephant in the room, which is the negligence. And the judge agreed that this was indeed a case where the defendant owed a duty of care to the claimant. Under the law of negligence, particularly in employment relationships, employers must ensure that their workers are not exposed to unnecessary risk. And the case of Cabo Air Limited versus Mohammed 2009 was invoked to reinforce the duty of care owed by employers. And then the judge emphasized that lawyers must not only provide protective equipment, but must also supervise employees in dangerous work environments. The court concluded that Alibert Production breached this duty of care. Here's why. Despite the defendant's claims, they failed to provide any solid evidence proving that Mr. Udoh had been assigned proper protective equipment. And even more damning was the fact that the defendant admitted that the claimant was working without supervision on the day of the event, which is a clear violation of safety protocols for such hazardous work. Justice Oyewumi noted that while Mr. Udoh may have contributed to his own injury by handling the machine when he shouldn't have, this did not absolve the defendant of their responsibility. After all, it was their failure to address the faulty machine and enforce safety standards that set the stage for the injury. The ratio decidendi was clear. The defendant had breached their duty of care, and as a result, they were liable for the injury suffered by the claimant. So, what was the final outcome? The court awarded 4 million in damages to Mr. Udoh for the injury that he suffered due to the company's negligence, and the court also ordered 500,000 naira as the cost of litigation. However, the claims for punitive damages and compensation for trauma during hospitalization were denied. Why? Because the court found that these had already been factored into the overall compensation awarded under the negligence claim. In the end, this case stands as a crucial reminder. Employers have a legal duty to protect their workers, especially in hazardous environments. Ignoring safety protocols can come at a very steep price, not just financially, but also in human lives and well-being.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Case Chronicles by Case Radar. We hope you found this deep dive into the legal intricacies both informative and engaging. Until next time, this is your host signing off.